have you been watching Breathtaking? It's the new ITV show which shows firsthand the harrowing emergencies faced by the NHS in the early stages of the pandemic. We reported on it every day during the COVID pandemic, but this shows in graphic detail, behind the scenes, at the front line, staff running out of masks, tests and even oxygen. It's based on the real-life accounts.
I'm Dr. Henderson. I'm the consultant.
My dad has COVID because of you. You've killed him.
OK, I just need to come up to speed. So you tell me what...
You sent someone back to his care home with COVID. Now they've all got it.
No.
7 people are dead because you didn't test them before you sent them back there. And now you've got your beds for the younger ones. Murderers!
She's right. We're killing people with these discharges.
So Joanne Froggatt is playing a character based on Dr. Rachel Clark, who co-wrote the show and whose memoir this is based on. Good morning. Did you have situations like that where people, other members of staff were saying it's your fault because you're discharging people from hospital into care homes without testing them?
Yeah, literally everything that you see on screen in Breathtaking is true in the sense that it has really happened to real patients, real members of staff, and that was a kind of basic principle in the writing and creating of the drama. And that awful scene that we've just seen is absolutely based on my experience and our experience. At that time, there weren't enough COVID tests. Staff couldn't get them. Patients couldn't get them in the main part. And the tests that there were taking 5 days to come back. So if you had a patient, do you send them back to their care home without a test? Or do you keep them in a hospital filled with COVID where they'll catch COVID and die because there's a 5-day lag? And that's why when the government claims their testing service was world-beating, we, who actually looked the patients in the eyes, know that it was a travesty of that.
Gosh. I just asked the Health Secretary what lessons she's learned, which we should implement now if there's a pandemic.
Yes.
And she said she was still working on it.
Yes. I have to say I was absolutely astonished by that answer, that non-answer from Victoria Atkins. She seemed to find it impossible to recommend anything to the British public. It was too difficult, too complex. How about this? How about, first and foremost, protecting NH staff now? Because not only did we not have PPE at the time, we don't even have proper PPE now. If I go to see a COVID patient, I still don't get a proper FFP3 protective mask. I get a flimsy paper mask. That is staggering. The evidence shows that the good FFP3 masks stop you catching COVID. So not only is the government still unprepared for a next pandemic, they're still failing staff now, and they're still having the temerity not to be honest about that. And the second thing that I would suggest could change right now to better protect the public and NHS staff is please, please, can we have a government that is honest and stops spinning about this? Let's admit that the NHS was overwhelmed. Let's admit that staff have been so traumatised by COVID. Some have left the NHS, some are having counselling for PTSD. I had to have trauma counselling. Some are suicidal as a result of what they've endured. Let's be honest about that. We have a government who cut funding for staff mental well-being and support a year ago.
Can I, Dr. Rachel Clark, I can imagine a lot of people very sympathetic. Obviously, I mean, goodness me, there's no doubt that NHS went through hell during the pandemic. But a lot of people say that there were Nightingale hospitals, there were whole extra hospitals that were set up in order to cope with the overflow of patients and were never used. Is there an explanation for that?
There absolutely is, Susanna. And again, I have to say this at the time, to those of us working in the NHS, it felt like government performance rather than reality. A bed space is not what cares for a patient. It's human beings, nurses, doctors who care for patients.
So basically they were
empty shells,
but without and were unstaffed.
Yeah. So great for photo ops, rubbish for caring.
I mean, I have to say, I watched it last night. It's really harrowing and very, very triggering. But for you, I mean, when you watch it now, how did you feel the first time you saw it? I mean, was it very, very stressful?
Yes, I mean, I was there on set. We kind of built a hospital inside a disused college, and on set I cried as soon as I got there because it was
Davina's story is so tough.
And based intimately on what so many staff experienced, yeah.
You co-wrote it with Jed Mercurio and another former
Prasanna
doctor.
Puanaraja. So the three of us are practising or former doctors.
And Jed Mercurio is a former doctor as well.
Yes.
So the sort of clinical accuracy was really important to you. But if there's one thing you want people to take away from Breathtaking, and I'm sure you've had a huge response, millions of people are watching it, what would it be?
Well, more than anything, I think, I want people to know that though it was horrific and though the country has been through a trauma, if their loved one was in a hospital, we tried everything we could to care for them well. We may have been wearing masks, visitors may not have been allowed in, but in the place of family members, there were doctors, nurses, every member of the team who did everything, held hands, cared for patients, showed them love at the bedside. And please know that your loved one was not alone. We did our best.
That's such an important thing for people to know. Dr. Rachel,
and it's why people were
you.
clapping for the NHS.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Final episode is tonight, 9 o'clock on ITV1, and you can see the whole 3-part series on ITVX.
Yeah.